We hear the story of Mary and Joseph almost every Christmas. We know the names, we know the nativity scene, and we think we know what happened. And because we've heard it so many times, we stop feeling the weight of what they actually lived through. And you see, the real story is not soft or sentimental. It's not a peaceful scene we picture on Christmas cards. It's messy. It's terrifying. It's filled with fear, confusion, scandal, heartbreak, danger, and incredible faith. And if we could step into their shoes for even a moment, I think we would realize that this is one of the most astonishing stories of trust in the entire Bible. Mary and Joseph were not two serene, glowing characters in a stable. They were two ordinary people whose lives were flipped upside down by God's calling. And they faced the judgment of their community, the threat of losing their marriage, and the weight of raising a child they didn't fully understand. And somehow through it all, they chose faith. And most of us rush past their story because it seems familiar. But if you slow down and look at it with fresh eyes, the story will shake you. It will challenge you. It might even show you what real faith looks like in your own life. So let's revisit this famous story and let's feel what they felt and see what they saw. And let's rediscover the courage and the trust and the faith of Mary and Joseph. Now, before we look at what Mary and Joseph can teach us together, it helps to slow down and see their stories separately. Each of them lived through this moment in very different ways with their own fears and reactions and decisions. And when you look at each of them, what they each faced on their own, the depth of their faith becomes even more powerful. So let's start with Mary and then we'll turn to Joseph's. Here's Mary's story. It began quietly. She was young, engaged, living in a small town, preparing for a simple, ordinary life with Joseph. Everything is going according to plan. Then one day the unimaginable happens. An angel shows up. And Luke tells us that Mary was greatly troubled. She knew that nothing good normally ever really started with an angel suddenly appearing in your living room. And whatever happened next, her life would change forever. And it did. The angel tells her that she is pregnant. But before the shock can fade, the angel adds even more, that the child she is carrying is the Son of God. Now imagine hearing that at her age, in her culture, with her future hanging in the balance. We read this every December like it's this beautiful news, but for Mary in that moment, it had to be terrifying. This wasn't good news for her in the short term. This was news that could cost her everything. She could lose Joseph. She could be rejected by her family. She could be shamed from her community. And in extreme cases, she could even be put to death. No one is going to believe a story about a virgin pregnancy from God. Mary knows that. Her life is flipped upside down in that moment. And still she chooses faith. Now let's look at Joseph's story. While all of this is happening to Mary, Joseph starts in the dark. Mary has to be the one to tell him. She has to say, surprise, I'm pregnant. And before he can even react, she adds this part that would probably make any sane person confused. She says, don't worry, it's from God. Now put yourself in Joseph's shoes. He's not seen an angel. He's not been told anything. From his perspective, the woman he loves has betrayed him. He's dealing with heartbreak and anger and confusion. And it would have been overwhelming. And yet, even in his pain, Joseph chooses kindness. He decides to break off the engagement quietly, to protect Mary from public shame. He doesn't lash out. He doesn't make a scene. He shows mercy, even when he doesn't have to. And that decision reveals his character long before he even knows the truth. It's only later that an angel does visit him and confirms what Mary has said. She was telling the truth. God is at work. The child she is carrying is from the Holy Spirit. And Joseph responds by doing exactly what God asks. He sticks with Mary. He takes her on as his wife, and he steps into the story that will cost him socially and personally. He embraces the responsibility of raising Jesus as his own. And when you bring these two stories back together, Mary and Joseph, you begin to see the full picture of what they walk through. Both of them had their lives interrupted by God. Both were faced with choices that they never expected, and both had to decide whether they would trust God or walk away. Mary said yes to God, knowing it could cost her everything. Joseph took her on as his wife, knowing that everyone would assume the worst. And in that moment, they stepped into obedience. The challenges only grew. A census forced them to travel back to Bethlehem. That meant days on the road while Mary was nearly 9 months pregnant. And when they arrived, no one had space for them. Or more likely, nobody wanted to be associated with a couple whose story made no sense. So Mary gave birth in a stable surrounded by animals because obedience led them somewhere they would have never chosen to go. And just when things seemed like they might settle down, word of Jesus reached the wrong ears. Herod, terrified of losing his throne, he lashed out in violent fear. He ordered every young boy in Bethlehem to be killed. The Christmas story includes weeping, mourning, and families shattered by a king's paranoia. It's the part of the story we rarely talk about, but it's there. And in the middle of that chaos, God warned Joseph in a dream to flee. So this young couple took their newborn son and ran for their lives. They became refugees in Egypt with nothing but trust in the God who had led them there. And this is the real story of Mary and Joseph. It's not tidy, it's not quiet, it's not comfortable. It's faith lived out in the middle of fear, confusion, danger, and uncertainty. And through every twist and turn in the story, they chose to keep saying yes to God. And this is what makes their story so incredible. And when you step back and look at their story, it becomes clear why Mary and Joseph are such incredible examples of faith. They did not have all the answers. They did not have clarity about what God was doing, and they had every reason to walk away. But instead, they chose trust in the middle of fear, uncertainty, and hardship. And their story gives us a few powerful lessons we can apply to our own lives today. So I want to look at 3 lessons that this story teaches us. And the first is this: fear does not have to dictate your faith. The Christmas story opens up with the same words to both Mary and Joseph: do not be afraid. That tells us that fear was already shaping how they saw their circumstances. They were overwhelmed and confused. They were worried about what this news would cost them. And yet they responded with obedience, not because they were fearless, but because they trusted the one who is calling them. Faith is not the absence of fear. It's choosing God even when fear surrounds us. The second lesson they teach us is to follow God's plan, not our own. Both Mary and Joseph had a picture of how their life was supposed to go. Marriage, stability, a normal future in a normal town. And then God interrupted it all by calling them to someplace they never thought they'd go. And they couldn't see the full story. They didn't understand what hung in the balance, but they trusted anyway. And on the other side of their obedience was something far bigger than they had planned or imagined for themselves. And the same is true for us. God often leads us where we don't expect, not to disrupt our lives, but to lead us into a better one. And finally, Mary and Joseph show us to trust God even when it doesn't make sense. Nothing about this situation makes logical sense. A virgin pregnancy, a confused fiance, a dangerous ruler, a desperate escape, and yet, through each step, they kept saying yes to God. They wrestled, they questioned, they struggled to understand, but they did not walk away. And sometimes God calls us into these moments that stretch our understanding and challenge our expectations. And in those moments, we can either cling to what makes sense, or we can trust God who sees what we cannot. And Mary and Joseph, they were ordinary people who chose to trust God in extraordinary circumstances. And because of that, God wrote an incredible story through them. And He can do the same through you too. It's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to make sense. But it will always be worth it. And so I challenge you to look at this story of Mary and Joseph this Christmas season a little bit differently. And ask yourself, what does God want me to do? What is God calling me into? Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it challenged you to approach the story of Mary and Joseph a little bit differently. If it did, would you drop a comment down below letting me know your thoughts? And also don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date on future content. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.